Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing Venom. I still have a little bit of a sniffle like last time, but it's not quite so bad, in theory. In theory it shouldn't interfere so much and I should be able to get this done in this sitting, but who knows, this might end up stretching over another day. But yeah, since we're drawing Venom, we're going to be talking about posing, and I'm also going to be talking about proportions. So, there's a few different schools of thought on this when it comes to proportioning Venom, so we'll get to that. There's also a few different schools of thought when it comes to posing Venom. We'll also get to that. Hence our two topics for today. We only have two of them, but they're probably going to end up being a little bit more dense than usual, because I'll have a lot of explaining to do. But yeah, largely speaking, this should in theory be easier than last time, because all of the real detailing for Venom is kind of just up here. Most of the rest of them is fairly simple. It's just muscling. It's just muscle detailing, which isn't so bad in theory. But yeah, anyways, I'll roll the intro and then I'll talk more. So yeah. So right, now it's time for me to talk more. So, as I said, let's start with the easy thing, being, I'll talk a little bit about some design stuff actually. That's probably a good place to start rather than going too deep into these topics. So, design-wise, there are a few things which often change about Venom. Mostly the eyes. So I've gone for the, specifically the eyes that he has in the original, in his sort of earlier appearances in the Todd McFarlane art. That's sort of what I've gone for here, where his eyes are mostly just slightly more angular Spider-Man eyes. They're not too distinct. It's not like Ultimate Venom where his eyes just sort of like kind of trail along to the back of his head, which is similar to how he looks in stuff like Marvel vs. Capcom. And it's also not quite like the animated series where he's got the sort of little like divots that go in. He's got his little indents. But yeah, so one of the things which I was considering doing was, because as you can see the eyes are obviously the classic eyes, I was thinking to myself, well, why don't I make him look more like classic Venom in that in a lot of the original sort of early Venom art, he doesn't really have the big tongue, it's just the teeth. You just see him with his big teeth. And I was thinking to myself, why not just give him a full mouthful of teeth, and that might be easier, and in theory, as it would be easier to draw. The problem is, it's just, the tongue is more iconic, for one, and for two, the tongue does a lot for selling motion. Which here, as you can see by the pose, he's leaping. He's sort of, yeah, he's leaping into the air, and his arms are out like this. Now, I don't know if I'll actually add this. I might leave his arms simple like this. But the reason why there's these two extra lines here is just to show that he's, originally my intention was to have him pulling down on a bunch of webbing, that he's like yanking himself up. And yeah, his sort of upper body is moving down, hence why the tongue is moving up, because that's lighter, so it's getting trailed up. So obviously once the motion would be complete, the tongue would be down, but as it's just beginning, his tongue is up. Yeah, I'm gonna probably have to change the slobber, because the slobber here is quite thick. It shouldn't really be that thick, so I'll probably alter that and just have it be sort of maybe a little bit more subtle, a little simpler. Symbol, I just decided to make it very angular, very simple. He's got some slight ab work here, but that will probably disappear a little bit as time goes on. Right, okay. So now we should probably cover proportions before I touch on posing too much. So proportionately, there's a few different schools of thought, as I mentioned, on how you proportion Venom. Some people prefer the sort of big, hulky kind of Venom, which is what you get in like an Ultimate Spider-Man sort of look. It's also what he looks like in Spectacular Spider-Man. It's what he looks like in a lot of the games. It's not what he looks like. Well, it's sort of what he looks like in Spider-Man 2. Sort of, the new game. It's very confusing. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 would probably be the better way of describing it, yes. So that's sort of what he looks like there, where he's pretty big, but he's not quite hulky. in that. He's not as big as like an ultimate Venom, where he's just like basically just a big bubble body on tiny legs. And then there's the more sort of classic look to Venom, where he is big, he's buff, but he's not proportioned to be like kind of monstrous. He's still proportioned kind of like a human, but he's very big. He's just very tall. He's like 8 feet tall. Yeah, he's about like 8 feet tall, and he's really, really buff. It's not an inhuman, well, not entirely an inhuman physique. So that's sort of what I've gone for here, is more of a sort of classic looking Venom, in that he's very, very buff. This arm is actually bigger than that arm. Just noticed that there now. I'll have to make this arm a little bit buffer. It's just the bicep really is the only difference, the only thing that's kind of wrong with it. Yeah, this one is a little less buff than that one. I could trim this one in, that might be easier actually. But yeah, he's very buff. He's got big pecs, big arms, big legs. But realistically speaking, if you were to have him stood up straight, he wouldn't look. He would still be sort of man-shaped. He isn't like a big monster shape. But again, some of the sort of bigness here comes in the fact that he's sort of like hunching in. His neck is you can't really see his neck because his shoulders are coming up and his head's coming down. So hence why you can't really. Yeah, he would have a neck though, unlike say an Ultimate Venom. And that's kind of the simple stuff for proportioning in terms of Venom. Again, he's just big. He's just very big. Is the sort of thing I've gone for here. He's not inhuman shaped, but he is obviously very, very buff. Very, very buff, and also very tall. Now, the other thing is posing. So posing is obviously influenced by your proportions. So obviously this Venom is very buff. So to a degree, he has to be sort of, and he's also very tall. So certain proportions have to be changed to match that. For example, yeah, this arm should definitely be buffer because this arm is sort of coming in more, whereas this one's more straight out. So yeah, certain things have to be kind of changed to match that. For example, his legs are really huge, but that's because whenever your leg bends and whenever it contracts inwards, all the muscle sort of flays out. It just sort of it gets thicker whenever it's all, because it's all contracted and then flexing because of that, with the way that the leg is bent. And so obviously that's the same on both legs, and obviously his arms are out, so they don't look quite as buff as the legs, but this arm should definitely look more buff than this one, because this arm is more bent, meaning that the bicep is flexing more, in theory. But yeah, so in terms of the pose, as I say, he's supposed to be sort of leaping up. A lot of Venom's poses aren't always super dynamic. A lot of Venom's poses, a lot of the art that I see at least, is mostly him sort of kind of like lumbering kind of in a sort of a Spiderman-esque pose, but not quite as acrobatic, because obviously Venom is just a bigger, a kind of it is a bigger, bulkier, sort of less acrobatic Spider-Man. That's generally his sort of his visual in that sense. Yeah, I think that's sort of everything I wanted to touch on. We're sort of getting a bit long in terms of the intro now, so I want to get moving. I was considering having a web pattern on the background, but that I think will take quite a long time, so I'm not going to do that. I'm probably just going to do the sort of the speed lines that kind of circle him, but not too many of them. I don't want it to get too crazy. I'll just sort of do subtle ones. I was originally thinking of making him blue, like in the Marvel vs. Capcom design, but I don't think that's what I want to go for here. Instead, I think I'm going to have him with the animated series look, where he's mostly black, but he's got the sort of blue and red rim lighting. I think that's what I'm going to go for here, because I think that'll look more interesting in this instance anyways. That'll make it stand out a little bit more from the last time I drew Venom, where it was Marvel vs. Capcom design. But yeah, anyways, we're 10 minutes in and I haven't even started drawing yet. So I will begin, I'll do these details, and then I'll be back to do the colors, which, you know, shouldn't take very long, but we'll see, because who knows. Anyways. Okay, so that is our details done. That was pretty quick, all things considered, an hour and a half just for the details, so that's a lot quicker than it was last time. Hopefully I can continue to make good progress like that, because I don't have an enormous amount of time with this, because I'm losing light. I'm losing light, which means I'm moving in a worse frame rate now. Ooh. But yeah, so next on the list is our colors. I don't think I'm going to do the webs thing. I think it looks cool enough for him to be like leaping out like that. I think that looks good enough. I think the arms are more in proportion now. This one is still slightly bigger, but I think this arm maybe is going slightly back, like he's pulling that one back. So in theory the bicep is actually thicker, but it's just that his arm is actually dipping back a little bit as it's bending. Whereas this arm is sort of cutting forward maybe. Because the shoulder is more in keeping. This shoulder was slightly smaller before, and this one was slightly bigger, but now they're more proportional to each other. So, color-wise, this should be pretty easy. I'm going to make his slime green. Ordinarily, I make it white, but I think I'll probably make it green just for the sake of having it stand out. Now, if I don't really like it, I can just change it. I can just change it and that'd be pretty easy to do. So that's not much of a concern. I'll try green first and then we'll see how that looks. If I don't like it, I'll change it back. In terms of, yeah, the rest of this really shouldn't be hard. There's only like 4 colors going on. There's white, there's black, there's the fleshy color of his tongue and his gums, and then there's the slime. That's it. That's his only colors. So I may as well use this opportunity to talk through some of my thoughts as to what I'm going to do in a little while with this shading. Because, as with everything on Venom, there's a few different schools of thought. So there's a few different schools of thought on how you shade Venom. More specifically on how does the symbiote look. Is the symbiote fleshy? Is it like tar? Is it like a goopy substance? Is it like fabric? Is it like a suit? Is that how it looks? A lot of people tend to go for more of the goo look, whereas I'm more of a skin sort of thought process on this. Because in theory it should look kind of like a second skin because of, I mean, he's got a mouth. So you would think that this would then be skin. That is like a skin. Not necessarily like actually skin, but that it would be lit like skin. So I'll probably go for softer painted shading to reflect that. I'm not going to be shading the white at all because I want that to pop and I want it to still have that sort of poppy look to it. So realistically speaking, the shading on this should be quite easy because I'm only shading black really and a little bit of the tongue. Mostly just the inside of the mouth is all I'm shading there. And then a lot of the rest of this will have to kind of remain kind of simple in its shading because I'm going to be doing the colourful light line. I'm going to be making the background blue. I'll have it maybe gradient out or something into maybe like a more of a purpley colour, like that has this slightly kind of purpley vignetting, but the centre is blue. And then I'll be doing my speed lines sparsely, because I feel like I have a habit of going a little over the top with the speed lines, because they just add a nice little bit of intensity. That's the thing, they add a nice little bit of intensity, but regardless, I'm definitely getting this done in this sitting. Maybe not in this sitting, but I'm getting it done tonight. This one isn't stretching over 2 days like last time. That's for damn sure. Anyways, I will throw in my background color, and then I will get moving on these colors. You'll probably see the lighting change because I will have to put on a light in here soon enough. My desk lamp is only going to do so much good. I'm already in the slower frame rate, so you know. I'm gonna need to start turning on lights in here soon enough. Anyways, I'll get moving, I'll do these colors, and then I'll be back to do the painted shading, where I'll maybe have more of a better idea of what I'm doing in terms of that, because my light line is going to really cover a lot of my detailed shading, so we'll have a think about that. I'll think about it as I'm going. Anyways, I'll move on. Alright, that is our colours done. So now it is time for the painted shading. So as I said before, I think I'm going to be sticking to the skin style of shading, meaning we're going to probably end up going a bit softer on the paints. Overall, I actually quite like the colour of the background. I think that's quite a nice gradient. But yeah, I will be putting in the speed lines. I'm not sure if I'll put in black speed lines or white speed lines. White speed lines might be a little much, but black I think would blend in. I think it has to be white if I'm doing them. I just won't do very many of them, I think. I think that's the solution here, is to just not do many. Right, okay. So painted shading, I only have to do the tongue and I have to and the black parts. So what we're going to be doing is to sort of keep this looking right. That means the sort of center mass needs to be, or like the interior parts of the color need to be the darkest part and the edges need to be the lightest part, in theory. Let's just say the light is on the top, so that I only need to do a little bit of paint along the top of the shoulders and head and the top of the legs, and that way I can kind of just speed through the rest of it. I think that's what I'll do. So that way the light will only be kind of going along the top here, and that won't be too bad. Yeah, okay, that seems pretty easy. So right, color-wise, I'll have to have a think about what my color palette is. I need something cool and blue. Okay, I'll have a peek at some color palettes, and I'll get on with this painted shading. So yeah, I'll be back to do the detailed shading, the light line, and our first gradient map after this. So yeah. Okay, that's our painted shading done. Very quick, nothing too difficult. Now, as you can see, I went for a purpley tone to the painted shading, because I'm kind of trying a bit of everything here with this Venom, I guess. So we've got more of an ultimate vibe here with the purple, but my gradient map should, in theory, skew that back to being blue. It should just have a very light purpley tinge to it, in theory. But the blue I'm going to use isn't going to be the same, like, really vivid blue, or I mean for the light line, for that part of the light line, isn't going to be the same, like, super vivid blue from the animated series. I'm going to use a sort of more purpley blue, just so that it sort of blends more in that sense. The red is going to still be a kind of a bright red, but it'll be a slightly duller tone. But yeah, so this is the detailed shading I'm moving into now. So I'm probably going to do... I got a lot of little bits to do in this section, because the detailed shading itself shouldn't be too tough. Shouldn't be too difficult to get through. So I'll do the detailed shading, which will just be, again, just following the same stuff that I set up here. We're dark under everything for the most part. Keep all the white nice and bright. Not going to be touching the slime either. So, right, yeah. I got to do that with detailed shading. That should be fairly quick. Then I'll throw in my light line, which will be a nice little bit of blue along the left and red along the right. And I'll just have that kind of follow along the general edge. This is going to be more of an intense light line than I would ordinarily go for. The light line normally I usually use just as a rim light. Here, this kind of needs to follow the edge of most of him. Because that's how it is in the animated series. It sort of just kind of goes around the edge of him the whole time. It's not just a rim light. Because I mean that's really the only bit of shading that he has. Because otherwise he's just mostly just full black. There's not really any shading or anything to it in the show. It's just black and then the rim light. So yeah, I'll do that, and then I also have to do my speed lines. Which shouldn't be too challenging either, but these are just all the little tiny bits that I'll have to do a lot of. Then I'll start my gradient maps, and then I'll come back in to introduce, or to wrap up. So yeah, anyways, I'll move on. Alright, well, that is all of that varied stuff done. Detailed shading done. Only detailed shaded the black area. And the tongue, actually. I did the tongue as well. Then I did light line, obviously, as you can see, which was the more time-consuming and difficult part of the bunch. The speed lines were pretty much up there in terms of time-consuming. Not necessarily difficult. I just needed to sort of remember the numbers and rotations. That's about it. Because, as you saw, I did the corners first, and then I just sort of started from the middle and then went around. So I had to sort of keep vaguely in mind what rotation. You can see this one isn't exactly the same as this one, because these are both 90 degrees, but they're not exactly in the same location. So that's the thing. So yeah, it's a little off, but it's good enough. It's not quite as off as some of the other ones I've done before. It's easier to do this whenever it's not the whole range of the screen. It's a lot easier to do speed lines whenever, say for example, you have a character which covers this amount of the screen. Whenever they're just in the dead middle and you're trying to work from there, that's challenging. Because that obviously requires forethought. For example, the best way to do it would be, if I was going to do the start, I would start from here. Then I'd do it like that. Then I'd do it like that. Then I'd rotate to whatever the corner rotation was, do this one, then do that one. Then do the opposite rotation, do that one, then that one. Same here, here, then the rest is a lot easier. And then it's also a lot more symmetrical that way. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's fine. Then the last thing I did was the gradient map, which is actually a shocking winner so far. Because it emphasizes all our colors. It's a very purple gradient map, but it actually works surprisingly well. Unfortunately, on the screen in front of me, this blue is just purple. I suppose I could change it, but that'd be quite awkward, and I don't really want to do that right now. So I think, honestly, I think this is truer to the color what is on the tablet in front of me. I think the screen is off. It's a little too washed out. This is obviously more vivid, but this is blue. I'm fairly certain that this is actually blue, not the purple as it displays on screen. Anyways, that's only one of our 3 gradient maps, so let's see how this works as we keep going. Before I move that, let's change the luminosity. Wow, that's weird. It has this weird like ring effect on the tablet. It's definitely dimmer. We don't want it to be that dim. Turn it down to 20%. Does it look better above or below? Below is definitely darker. We don't want it to be that dark. Put it above. Alright. Next, we want a color burn, because this will make our colors more vivid. This will sort of stain our white a little bit, but I think that's fine. Because we're only going to be having it on at 5%, so it's only going to slightly stain the white to be a little bit more purple. See? It's very subtle. Right, now we need to put on the texture, and because this is sort of animated styled, I'm not going to have the texture be very strong. Probably going to have it be quite weak, as a matter of fact. Probably not even above 20%, I would say. Probably no more than 20%. Right, okay. Stretch this over, set it to overlay, then turn it up to... Let's see, what does it look like at around 20%? That's definitely too much. I'd say 15%. 15%, I think that was what we used last time as well, was 15%. Because again, we're going to want it to apply some sort of subtle blending to the background. It does the texture always does very well with blending the sort of background elements. Blending the sort of nice vignette that we've got here of the sort of deeper purple around the blue in the middle. But yeah, that seems to work. It's not too aggressive on the character, which again we don't want it to be. We want to keep especially the rim light, or the light line I mean, to be very clear. We don't really want that getting blended, really. That's not the point here. But yeah, I think that's us done. I don't think there's anything more I need to do here. Yeah. So, that was that. That was a fun one. Not a particularly challenging one. I did have to take an hour-long break at one point there, so this is still 2 recordings, even though it's one day, which is a bit annoying, but you know, I'll live with it. I'll live. Anyways, yeah, that was all right. I quite enjoyed that. I'm actually very happy with the final product here. It's fun, it's dynamic, and it's got some nice little nostalgia points, which is always good. That's good nowadays, I think. Um, but yeah, I think the green slime actually came out a lot better than I expected it to. The Nickelodeon Gek looks pretty good. Um, yeah, normally the green wouldn't normally sit right with me. I'm generally not much of a fan of the green slime, but it actually works quite well here. That is surprising, but yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm happy with that. So yeah, I suppose I won't linger much longer. There's not really much more I have to say. I covered everything that I wanted to cover. I got through all the various different schools of thought that are involved in this. There's apparently a lot of those. Uh, anyways, so yeah, that's us, I think. So I think I'll just do my outro and then I'll leave you. So, with all that said, that is us. So, if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking or not. I, of course, prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so all I can do is politely suggest it, which I believe I've done. Same deal if you want to subscribe, go for it. Please do. It's a nice thing to do. You've presumably seen a YouTube video, so I don't need to tell you where the subscribe button is. It's below the video, just in case you didn't know that. Just felt like clearing that up. Do whatever you please to that subscribe button, so long as you don't unsubscribe. That would make me sad. I don't mean to guilt trip anyone here who unsubscribes. That's not my intention. But anyways, I need to move on. These outros are always way too long anyways. If you want to leave a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment. Politely worded, please. I would not like to read mean comments. And yeah, I believe that is everything I needed to say. So, that's us. So I'll say goodbye and I'll leave you. So, bye-bye.